Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Brendan Hauser with EVOQ Bike. So you're stuck with your threshold. It's not going up. You're not sure what is going on. You've read Landry's latest blog. Things just aren't piecing together. Let's talk about this real quick. I've had a few people reach out with this specific question and a couple athletes, and it's just the topic keeps coming up of like, why is my FTP not really going up? In the first part of the video, I want to talk about, well, maybe are you getting faster at something else? The second part of the video, let's talk about what are you actually doing to increase your threshold? Maybe you're not doing the things that give you the best chance to increase it. I don't want to say you're doing the wrong things, but sometimes people are doing a certain type of workout and they expect it to increase their FTP, and logically it just doesn't make sense. So this one athlete, we had only been working together for 8 weeks. So some of you right off the bat are like, dude, 8 weeks is not much time to make a change. The thing was, he had been riding. It was the middle of the season. Without going into super nitty gritty detail, he had some events scattered within this 8 weeks, and we were really preparing for a big trip in Europe. So it was getting ready for the events that he had. Like his ability to go over threshold was not good. He would get blown out the back. We were trying to do some anaerobic work, and then it was get prepared to climb a lot over a whole week. So I'm not at that point trying to necessarily increase your FTP because we had like 4 to 5 weeks to actually work on this. Rather, can you put together some long over-under sessions? Can you do some torque work? Can you know within yourself that you can ride a tempo for 2 hours? Like, just those small bullet points is more than enough stuff to work on in 6 weeks' time. So he had emailed me and said the way he had placed this was, hey, so we've been working together for a few months. I'm not seeing any FTP changes. I thought a few minor things would change at least a little bit. Do you have any thoughts? It's hard to stay motivated if I don't know how things are improving. Maybe there's other areas where I gain fitness. Or did I answer my own question here? And I love the question. I'm always, if you have, this is my soapbox. As a coach, I welcome all questions, and I have no problem with people questioning me. I think if you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, just like he said, it's hard to stay motivated. You want to know what path you're on. So here's the interesting thing. So I kind of talked through him of, hey man, we're getting ready for this trip. While over-unders can potentially increase your FTP, it's not like we went to do those to then go test right away to see what your 20, 30, 60-minute power was. He had some time off in there, and we kind of went through everything. I said, but, I want to paint the entire picture. How did you feel? Because you had one of your best weekends on one of these weekend races, and while that's not going to show an increase in your threshold power, that's really why we were training. So he says, okay, let me tell you how I feel. I feel great. I feel stronger than I was before. I feel like I can push myself on rides and recover, where at the beginning of the season, if I went into the red zone, I'd be done. I could hang out in zone 2 all day long, but if a hill came or I went to ride hard at my threshold for too long, I'd absolutely burn up. I feel like I can go deeper and I can hold it for a lot longer, and I'm really not afraid of pushing my heart rate anymore. I also feel healthier and lighter from losing some weight. Most importantly, I'm definitely having more fun! Exclamation point. So overall, I guess I do feel better and stronger. It's been a lot of hard work, but it's paying off. So in reading that, like, wait a minute, how did he not know that he was stronger? So this, the title of this video should be actually how to gauge your fitness without fancy metrics. A lot of this is how are you feeling? How are you riding? And I maybe failed as the coach in the beginning of this whole training plan of saying, yo, you're not going to see a threshold change. You're going to be able to respond to moves better. You're going to be able to dig deeper. You're going to be able to ride harder for longer. I mean, if you can do some of these over-unders 3x15, that doesn't sound terrible on paper, but that's a hard session. If you can crank out 80 to, depends on your level, 120 minutes of tempo, like true 85 to 90% threshold, and still finish a bike ride, that's not easy. For some of you watching, you might be well beyond that, and you're like, that is easy for me. That's clearly not this athlete, and we all are at a different point in our growth. But I think it's just really important. Take a look at the big picture of where you are at. This, I cannot tell you how many times this happens, and I don't want this to sound like a show for coaching. Self-coached athletes have this problem. Myself has this problem when I cannot see the forest from the trees. And it is so easy for me to fixate on the past 3 weeks of training and not the past, 6 months, or where I'm going and what's my focus. And that's why I'm always talking to a coach, to other coaches, to my friends who are there. Like I talk about cycling to people all the time, and we're always talking about like what are we doing in our process of training. Now, with that, second half of the video, sometimes the math in people's head is wrong. Like they have a 300 watt threshold and riding at 320 watts is hard to them. And they're like, this is too hard. I'm like, how do you expect your threshold to go up? This is supposed to be hard. And I say that not to be like someone's dumb and thinking that, but to actually increase your threshold, to actually physiologically change your body of what you can do more of, more work at a higher wattage. Sometimes you have to break it up in chunks. You might be doing like the 6x6 rest reduction block. I have done this with so many athletes that crush 30-minute PRs. And in the first time they try it, they might get through 3 or 4 and like, I'm cooked, because it is low VO2 max. And some people aren't good at gassing it and taking very short amounts of rest and going again. Really, that is what it's going to take for you to have a new FTP, right? Because if you're at 300 watts, most people check their FTP by doing a 20-minute test, 30-minute test, you're going to have to ride at like 340 watts for a long time to get a 20 watt bump in your threshold. If you're going after a 5 watt bump, like what's really the difference? It doesn't change your zones much at all. So do things like 6x6 rest reduction blocks. Do things that Landry mentioned in his blog, VO2 max training. Do more super threshold, 110% riding. Yes, there's going to be someone in the comments that says sweet spot. If you can ride sweet spot and increase your threshold, please go do it. I'm glad that works for you. That is more likely aimed at the newer athlete. And that's fine. If you're new and you're just starting training and riding at 95% of your threshold, somehow increases your threshold. Do you know what that probably is? Just you being able to maintain, you're growing in the amount of duration that you can keep constant pressure on the pedals. And if you can do that for 45 minutes, you can probably trick your brain into riding just a little bit harder and increasing your threshold. That's really just your 20-minute power. And now I realize I've opened a can of worms by saying that. But if it works for you, great, But then I would say try these other things that are above threshold when you do hit a plateau. So keeping this under 10 minutes. I hope this was helpful and not too all over the place, in that if you do not feel like your threshold's improving, look at the big picture. So if you're training, you can't be getting slower. You really shouldn't be. You might be training too much then, or you're training the wrong things, which is the second half of the video. Understand how to actually increase your threshold power, your FTP. And if it doesn't increase, continue. Okay, what else? Maybe this is where I'm at. It doesn't always, we don't end up with 900 watt thresholds. What can you get better at? Can you do the same power for longer? Okay, if you're doing 20-minute tests, start doing 30, start doing 40. No one does the hour, and very few people do the hour anymore. What's your heart rate at? Is this less physiological cost? I know that's not sexy to talk about, but if you're doing 300 watts at 150 BPM, if you can start doing it at 142, that's a lot better. I know it doesn't sound like it's going to matter. It will. You will be fresher at the end of the Grand Fondo, the bike race, whatever it is. Can you do threshold and then intervals after? You will continue to grow. You will be getting faster and better. You just got to somehow look for it. And then when you find that avenue, double down on it. Can you do, more efforts after the threshold interval? Can you do different, harder ones? And always, how does this apply to your racing? How does this apply to your events? This guy, I don't care if his threshold increased. I wanted him to be able to climb a lot. It's a ton of tempo, ton of low threshold. I clearly am just excited about this topic. Hopefully this helps you out. See the big picture. Good luck with your training racing.